Room. It's your weekly show. We are live on YouTube, and of course, we are on podcast as well. Thanks very much to everyone who's watching this on YouTube, tuning in. Appreciate it. Do make sure you get involved in the conversation as well. If you've got any questions for any of our guests today, do let us know on anything. Transfers, Everton, Barcelona potentially signing Michael Keane. Is that going to happen? I'm Ronald Koeman, I'm Romelu Lukaku, all that sort of stuff. But joining me today to chat about all things Toffees is Dave Downey. Dave, how are you, mate?
I'm okay, mate. Yeah, there's no chance of Michael Keane going to Barcelona. Let's just get that one out the way straight away.
Let's hang on before we discuss that, because it's been.
There's nothing to discuss. Michael Keane's not going to Barcelona.
Sarah Halpin joins us as well, albeit we can't get a video to work. So whenever Sarah speaks, you're just going to see her name, but that's all right, isn't it, Sarah?
Yeah, I apologise. Well, maybe it's not an apology. Maybe people are grateful of it. So it might be a blessing in disguise for some people. But yeah, we did try, but my camera's having none of it today. I secretly think Matt's just blocked me out, but we'll.
And joining us again for, he's been all around the world. He's been stuck on a cruise ship for 2 months. It's Mickey Horton. He's back again. Mickey, how are you, mate?
How you doing, mate? I'm sound good, pal. Think there's more chance of Robbie Keane playing up front for Barcelona than Michael Keane going.
All right.
But you have, Mickey, you've been all over the place, obviously, and you just saying before we came on, you were basically stuck on a boat in Manila for 2 months, weren't you?
I was, pal, yeah. I was stuck on a cruise ship. Lots of countries turned us away, mate. Obviously, cruise ships got a bit of a bad press, didn't they? So a lot of countries were saying, no thanks, turn around, go somewhere else. And God bless the Philippines. Eventually, after about 2 months bobbing up and down in the South China Sea, the Philippines let us in. And eventually I managed to get home, mate, about 2 months ago now. So nice to be back in the cold and the wind and the rain.
How on earth are you keeping yourself busy during that? So was there been any footy on during that time or not?
No, mate, no footy, zero. So obviously I'm a DJ, don't I? So I was literally all the passengers we managed to get off, but we still had a lot of crew on. So I had to download 112 Bulgarian anthems because obviously we've got lots of European crew on board and Eastern European crew. So obviously my musical knowledge, mate, has got better around Eastern Europe now.
I was going to say, but you went up to date with your Bulgarian tunes in that regard. Anyway, you'll have to send some over at the.
I'll send some over, pal. We'll have a party.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Certainly, we can flog Michael Keane to Barcelona for a good price anyway. But Dave, you joked about it there, but I think it's one of them where silly season is fully in force now when you're seeing stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah, you'll see stupid rumours like that all over the place, won't you? I saw that Leeds are potentially in for Edison Cavani. I've seen a few ones that you look at and think, how's that going to happen? But invariably, you see one or two that do come off every single summer, don't you? You see players rock up at clubs where you think that's not even imaginable that they've ended up at certain places. But the Michael Keane rumour is the figment of someone's imagination there. I have no idea why anyone would take that seriously because, well, first of all, Barca are skint, so they couldn't give us the money we wanted for them anyway.
There we go, Sarah. Barcelona couldn't afford Michael Keane.
Who'd have thought it, eh? I wasn't sure whether this was one of Keith Azul's doings, to be honest, when I saw this doing the rounds earlier. But yeah, you know what? Stranger things have happened, though, as you say. You never know if they tuned into Everton since Ancelotti came in. He's picked up form a bit. They might have watched him before that. Maybe they're like, he's some player, him, and future England captain. Let's get him over to Barca. But no, I can't personally see this one happening. But with Koeman, he does. So we'll wait and see. But I tell you what, that'll just be. Football for me will have hit new heights or lows or whatever you want to say. That one comes off.
Absolutely, mate. But I'll come back to you first on this one, Sarah, quickly, and then to Mickey because I've spoken to Dave about this a little bit already this week. But Koeman going to Barcelona in general, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's one of them, isn't it? He's done okay at the Netherlands, but you look back at his time with Everton, you look back at his last job in Spain was Valencia, and he ultimately failed in both of them. You look at Barcelona's situation, the players they've got, the presidential situation, he's had the director of football. It feels like he might be on a bit of a hand to nothing there, despite being a club legend.
Yeah, and you look at it, and for me, that's as you said, he's done all right with the Netherlands. But you look at the team they've got, and the players that are at his disposal. It's hard not to do well. I think it's easy to say that, but I mean, I don't have a great lot of love for the man, as I think most Evertonians will agree. And we saw that what he did at Everton brought in a load of players that didn't fit, spent a load of money, and we had a decent first season because we had some good players in there like Lukaku and the like, and Barkley. But just look at what happened to the football club after he was here. I think he set us back a lot, in my personal opinion. And when he hasn't got the players, like you said, Barcelona, who knows if Messi's still going to be there? They're in a real mess right now. So I think he's got a massive job on his hands, and only time will tell. But it does make me laugh how these managers who seem to get us into really bad situations always go on to manage like the biggest teams in the world. But yeah, we'll see what he does there. But yeah, it's a strange one, that.
What you make of it, Mickey?
Mental, absolutely mental. He's obviously going in. He's a bit of a dead man walking. Obviously, I think it's precarious. Obviously, the way they got a good spanking the other night, didn't they, as well? So he had to go. But it's, I believe he is in-house squabbling with all the players. I think Eric Abidal as well has just been turfed, and he had to go. But you would think that Marco Silva's probably rubbing his hands together, isn't he? Next in line, he's going to think there's got to be a decent job for me after Roberto landing the Belgium job. Obviously, now Koeman going into the Dutch job, followed by the Barcelona job. And it does make you think sometimes, how bad are we? How bad must we be? If some of these managers are going in and they're still sort of, there's teams coming in for them. So, you just wonder what a job that Carlo's got on his hands with Everton at the moment, because, these boys couldn't do nothing with us. He made a bit of a bad job. But I think the whole thing with Koeman as well as him and the whole Steve Walsh thing didn't work, did it? So I can't see Stevie going to Barcelona with him anytime too soon either.
Does it make it, Mickey said there, Dave, it's quite interesting in that regard. Roberto Martinez has gone on to do well with Belgium. Ronald Koeman's done well with the Netherlands, gone to manage Barcelona now. Is it one of those cases where sometimes you've got to go, maybe it's not everybody else, maybe it's us?
Well, I think that is the case, to be honest, because I'm very scathing about his time with us. I thought it was dreadful how Everton ended up with him, and his demise brought about Sam Allardyce's appointment as well. So we can't really forgive him for that either. But I do feel as if it's very easy to cast off managers as being poor if they simply don't do it at your club. I think we've seen it many times, haven't we, with various managers in the past. You think of, like, I don't know, springing to my mind, Andre Villas-Boas, who did a fantastic job in Europe, but when he comes to the Premier League, he was found out at both Chelsea and Spurs, and I'm pretty sure both of those clubs would say that he's a bit of a laughing stock, and they'd rather forget about his time there. With Koeman, Everton seemed to be the exception in his managerial career, because he was fine at Ajax, I'm sure they'd say. Valencia, a little bit indifferent, but one trophy there. You look at Southampton, he guided them to 7th place, ultimately why we went to get him as well. So, and the Netherlands, he's done a fantastic job. I'm pretty sure that everybody in Holland would say that they're sad to see him go, because the transformation they've been through with him, albeit with some of the best talents in the world, certainly at centre half in Ligt and Van Dijk, you can't really do much wrong there, can you? But that I think managers quite often get tainted with either the previous role, sort of they're only as good as the previous role, when quite clearly something clicks with him when he's working across Europe, perhaps not in the Premier League. So yeah, I do think there's an element of that. There's an element of that with Martinez as well. I'm sure if you were to speak to him nowadays, he'd be saying, well, I thought I did an adequate job at Everton, and I just wasn't supported financially maybe in those last couple of seasons when things started to go wrong and stuff. Look, we're far more emotionally invested in that, and it's difficult to pull yourself away from your personal feelings towards the likes of Koeman and Martinez and how it all ended. But quite clearly, other clubs see him as something different, see these people as figures that should be involved at a particular level. It goes to show, doesn't it, football, literally failure pays, doesn't it? You get paid off handsomely if the club chooses to sack you. And then in the case of Koeman and Martinez, you go on to bigger and better things, which is quite remarkable. But I agree with Mickey in general, with the sort of job that he did, and said it as well. It was forgettable at Everton. It set us back a long way. How much you label him or how much you label Steve Walsh at the time, purely speculative. Whether they were his players, whether they were Walsh's players, whatever it is, he certainly didn't do anything decent for Everton, and he left us in a mess. So yeah, I mean, I don't understand why Barcelona feel that way, but then again, like Mickey says, he's on a hiding to nothing over there. I think because they're giving him a 2-year deal. As we found out this morning, 1 year they can cut all ties with him, and the president that's favoured to get the job in March next year has promised the Barcelona faithful that Xavi is coming anyway. So he's got no money to spend, and he's got a side that's pretty down on its haunches now, probably the worst Barca side we've seen for many years. So best of luck, Ronald.
He's going to get another payoff after the year, by the looks of it.
Well, if there's a cut-off contract, I mean, I don't think he can if they've got that clause, but he quite clearly is not going to turn it down, despite how good Holland are. He's not going to hang around there if the dream comes along. I mean, he was always talking about Barcelona wherever he's been, hasn't he? He's been talking about he sees everywhere else as a stepping stone. I think it's one of the main reasons why we all didn't take to him in the first place, because he had that thought in his mind straight away at Everton, didn't he? That it was a stepping stone, and he's right in the end, though, isn't he? Ironically, he is right. Everton were a stepping stone to get to Barcelona.
Yeah, I think whilst someone was expecting him to end up at Barcelona, it was maybe by virtue of him doing a good job.
Yeah.
Being pinched by them in a few years' time, but obviously it will be interesting to see how that one goes. Aside from that, Everton, a bit of Everton news away from transfers. There's not tons about, so we ought to be focusing mainly on the transfer stories today. We'll start off with the talk of one potential outgo, and I'll come to you first on this one, Mickey, before Sarah. Over the weekend, Tom Davies was linked with a move to Newcastle United, and me and Dave were speaking to John Richardson, who's a journalist this morning, who's a Newcastle fan, who sort of said, please, lads, keep him away from our football club. We didn't want him anywhere near Newcastle. And obviously this is split opinion on Twitter. Some people just don't want to sell him. Some people think he's got potential. Some people want him out the door for nothing. And there's some who'd say, yeah, I'm not too sure, but if we get a good sort of amount of money for him, it's probably the right deal for everyone. I mean, as you look at it now, is 12, first and foremost, is £12 million enough for Tom Davies for you to think, yeah, time to move him on?
Such a tough one, mate, because I think we all forget how actually young Tom Davies is. I think is he 20 now? Is he 19 or 20?
I think he's 21, isn't he?
Is he? Okay. So, and I think obviously he burst onto the scene as a kid. Probably the worst thing that could have happened to him, wasn't it, scoring that goal? Since
22 years, Mickey. 22
right, okay. So he's a bit older than what I thought, actually. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit. And as I say, obviously, since he scored that goal, there's just been a huge amount of pressure on him. Obviously, young local lad. I just think he's been given chance after chance after chance. And for me personally, he just doesn't cut it. I don't think he's good enough for Premier League football. And I think he's probably really lucky a club like Newcastle coming in for him. If we can get round him, I mean, the market's so difficult to judge, isn't it? Obviously, with the whole COVID situation, trying to judge a right fee for selling players and bringing players in is really difficult at the moment. But I think if we can get, maybe 15, 20 million for him, I think it probably would be time to let him go. And it's a shame because obviously, he's a good lad and that, local lad, everything about him is really nice. He's never on the front pages of the newspaper. He conducts himself right. It just seems that I think we need to rebuild in the midfield. And obviously we need to get money in. And if they come in with between 12, 15 million, I just think it's probably the right time. And it'd be a good move for both the club and the player himself.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts on this in the comment box on YouTube as well. Be interesting. It does seem to be quite a divisive one. What do you think, Sarah, on that?
Yeah, I was quite surprised, to be honest, Matt. I didn't expect Tom to be one of the first ones that was being linked with a move away. Mixed emotions for me on this. Like, I'm with Mickey in the sense that we do need to totally build that midfield. It's been a mess, hasn't it? And I know, since we lost Garner, obviously the Koeman situation's been awful. Then we had the injury to Gomez. It's just not been working out with, Sneijderlin's gone now. Gylfi Sigurdsson's not been performing as you would need and require him to do. And neither's Tom. And I feel a bit sorry for him in the sense that he does always give it everything. He never shies away. And he's been, again, given a really tough task this season and thrown into all kinds of messes in that midfield. But Yeah, and it might be the best thing for him as well to start somewhere new and get a new club in Newcastle. You know, they've got a big fan base, good stadium, and that they'll be in the Premier League. I know they're obviously in a very different situation than what they foresaw a few weeks ago. It's a bit madness. You know, you've seen on Twitter people saying we thought we were going to sign Mbappe and now we're being linked with Tom Davies and all that kind of thing. And it is madness when you look at what's happened there with the takeover. But yeah, in terms of Tom, if he stays, I'm happy enough. If he was to go out on loan, I'm happy enough. If he was to be sold, I'm happy enough. But if he stays, I don't think any of us can be under the illusions that it would be that he's going to be starting in that midfield. I think we pretty much need an entire new midfield. So yeah, it ultimately depends on Ancelotti, but he has been giving him game time. So we'll have to wait and see. But if he was to move on to Newcastle, you know, clearly I wish him nothing but the best.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure these rumours are going to carry much weight and whether Newcastle are going to bid for him. You know, I've reading before actually that, you know, Jeff Hendricks looks like he's going to be on his way there as well. So it seems like they're going to strengthen the midfield in that sense. But I think it's prompted an interesting discussion and just trying to look at this a different way, Dave. You know, as Mickey was saying there, I didn't realise Tom Davies was quite so, you know, not old, but older in inverted commas, you know, at 22 years old now. He's been on the scene for a while. He's played 100 games for Everton, and we don't really seem to know the best way to use him. He doesn't really seem confident. He's not really kicked on as a player. And I was just thinking, if you put yourself in his shoes, what do you think he's thinking this summer? Because Everton are being linked with a lot of midfielders. He signed a lot of midfielders last summer. And I think he will be the first to admit that when he got his chance in the games post-lockdown and, you know, thinking about the Merseyside derby, that chance he missed, the next game after that, he was hooked against Norwich at half-time. I mean, he was just in and out the side by virtue of the fact that we had nobody else really in the team, and we were just sort of moving deck chairs on the deck of the Titanic, if you will. And it was, I just sort of thought, what would you want to do with your Tom Davies this summer? At 22, experience in the Premier League, your career's meandering a little bit. Surely you'll be thinking maybe it's time for me to move on as well.
Well, like I said, it says what happens with him and what he decides to do. Indeed, if it's left up to him, will indicate how much ambition the lad's actually got. Now, quite clearly, there's an emotional attachment because he's an Evertonian. He's been through our academy system after spelt Tranmere when he first sort of made his way as a footballer when he was a kid. Now, if you're reading the writing on the wall and Everton are about to sign possibly a goal to midfield players, we hope, adds to the fact that quite clearly the manager has seen issues there because he's hooked them at half time and things like that. I feel as if you got me saying Koeman again. I get the feeling that Ancelotti, when he's hooked him and things, and on the occasions when he's decided to put him back into the team, it's been more a case of necessity rather than preference, really. And I would be disappointed if I'm sitting there as him now. If I've got the ambition to be a top-level Premier League midfield player, or even just a Premier League midfield player that starts games all the time, I'm thinking Everton's not the place for me. Now, you can have the attitude of let's stay and fight for my shirt and things like that, but like you said, and this is where I do have sympathy with him, there's a guy on Twitter who wrote something the other day saying Everton have let him down. Now, I wouldn't go that far in the slightest at all because you have to take responsibility for your own actions, and when he's had the chance, he just simply hasn't delivered in anywhere near enough the amount of games that you'd expect them to, or even have a sort of a standard that he aspires to. You know, he's not the type of player that you throw in and know that you're going to get invariably a 6, even a 5 out of 10 performance. And even his best games in an Everton shirt haven't been that productive. I don't think that's unfair to say either. So if you're him, you're like, okay, well, I've got a chance to go to, say it's Newcastle, I've got a chance to go to a Premier League club and really prove myself. It's a clean slate for me. I don't have that burden of being an Everton fan and having people putting pressure on me like they may have done with the likes of Ross Barkley beforehand. Leon Osman springs to mind. And it's a clean slate and a fair chance. But he will be torn by that, Matt, because let's face it, we're all Evertonians. If you had the option to play for Everton, even in a bit part role, you'd still probably consider that a lot better than going somewhere else and playing first team football all of the time. So I think he needs, and obviously we know his agent really well, and he'll give him the best advice. I have no doubt about that. I'm almost certain. Well, I am certain Neil Sang will give him the best advice on what's best for his career. But ultimately, it comes down to his personal decision. If he wants to stay at Everton, nobody's going to stop him from leaving. Nobody's going to make him leave, should I say, which is a difficult one for him to cope with, because he could end up then in a situation where he is just rotting on the bench. And he's better than that. He is better than that. As much as I've had frustrating conversations about him and had to go to the extremities of calling him a not a good footballer, there is something there. I don't think it's enough, but I think it's enough to make a career out of being a competent. You've just mentioned Jeff Hendrick going to Newcastle there. He's probably in that mould. That's probably him, a sort of half-decent midfield player who'll get stuck in and we'll find a pass for you. But at Everton, you were crying out for more consistency than that. You need to do a little bit more than that, because let's face it, the midfield players we've had over the last 3, 4, even 5 years have been allowed to get away with murder in that team. And it's about time that changed right now. So clean slate, fresh start. I think 12 to 15 million, like Mickey says, is probably a decent deal for all concerned. And that's sadly probably what the end of him would look like if things go to plan. But I'm certain he wants to stay. He will tell everybody he wants to stay and want to fight for this place. I just don't think it's going to work out for him. 121 games he's played in an Everton shirt. How many of them can we say we've got the player we thought he was, or we've got somebody who's going to change games and be a positive force in our side? Sadly, it's not that many.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how he'd handle life outside of the Everton bubble as well.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point, because he's been brought up in the safety bosom of Everton, hasn't he? Really, he's had that sort of a safety net, if you like, of being a local lad who's done nothing but be affiliated with our club, and he's steeped in the history, all that stuff. For him to go out into the wide open world, it'd be like any of us four starting a brand new career or a brand new job somewhere. It'd be entering the unknown. So, I mean, it'd be a mental challenge for him as much as it would be in terms of actually performing on the pitch as well. I'd be really intrigued if he goes somewhere like Sarah says. I'd wish him nothing but well, because he's given everything, but unfortunately, and it's regrettable to say it, but it's just not enough, and he's not good enough.
Yeah, going to be interesting developments anyway. I've got a feeling he'll still be here next season anyway.
I do.
But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. I think I'll probably prefer him to go out on loan. Let's have a chat about some of the players we've been linked with. And do you know what? First and foremost, I'll come to you first on this, Sarah, before going to Mickey. Have any of the players that Everton have been linked with really excited you? Because I've sort of looked at them and gone, yeah, all right, functional midfielder. Yeah, good offer as a presence. We've been linked with experienced right backs, but there's not really been any of them where I've gone, oh, bloody hell, I'm really, really hoping to sign in.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, I don't know if that's too much of a bad thing, to be honest, because I think back to a lot of the signings that I've been excited about and it's not worked out too well. Maybe it's time we need to bring in a few to just steadily and solidly improve the team in that midfield. And one that I will say does excite me, and one that looks apparently like it's going to come off, if you're to believe everything that's being speculated about, is Alan. I just think that somebody like that in the midfield who's so aggressive and strong and kind of a bit of a nutter by the looks of things, I feel like that's the kind of player that we're crying out for. And obviously he knows Ancelotti well, and that's someone that seems to have been identified. And Decore as well, I'm a big fan of his. It's not like we're looking at bringing in a huge, massive name. Well, mind you, if we were to get Thiago Silva in the back, that's still sort of doing the rounds. But yeah, I don't think it is going to end up being a window like we'd maybe hoped for pre-pandemic, that we'd be able to hopefully bring a load of top signings in, and, there's less time. But no one's really, getting me too excited and, excited about looking forward to players that are coming in and wearing the blue shirt. But yeah, Alan, I think for me is what we need, but there's so many areas that need improving, that I feel like this is just going to be the first step, and we need to act quickly. If we've got a game, haven't we, on Saturday? And it's like, wow. But yeah, there's no one that's going to get us too excited, I don't think, is basically what I'm saying. But there's players that are being linked that I think we definitely need.
Yeah, what about you, Mickey? You getting Decore or Alan on the back of your shirt at the arrive?
I just think with the players that we've been linked to, mate, it's something we've just got to get used to now. We're so down the list now of teams that where players want to come to. There's probably 7 or 8 in the Premier League now that are all above us that can offer, European football. We don't have that to offer them. We've got probably the Carlo Effect. We're lucky that we've got a manager that people are aware of, that is known throughout the world. So we've got the Carlo Effect. We've got a few quid and we can probably pay decent money. And we're so lucky that we've got all of that because, as I say, I think clubs otherwise wouldn't come to us. I think, obviously, I live up here in Blackpool, and when you go to the fair, if you don't do too well, you pick a prize off the bottom shelf instead of the top shelf. And I think that's exactly where we are at the moment. So, as I say, the Carlo Effect, I like to Decore, mate. I like him. I do. I think he's a little bit hot and cold. I think he's a little bit of a big fish in small pond as well. But from what I've seen of him, I think he's okay. And from what's out there, and I think who we're going to be linked with, he'd be one that I would think would certainly improve our midfield. I think that's what we've got to look at. Players that are not so much big names, but are certainly going to improve what we've got. Obviously, the difficult thing there will be dealing with Watford.
Yeah, at the moment, Dave, it looks, the rumours are being believed. It appears as though it could be Decore for a fee in the region of 20 to 30 million pounds. I think the report from the Evening Standard over the last couple of days has said it's going to be 25 million Watford are after. So you'd imagine it could get done round about there. And then Alan potentially on loan from Napoli. And with that in mind, I think if you look at getting both of them for next season for a total of 25 million, while I've probably got concerns about the style of both of them and how they fit together in the same team, that does seem like pretty sound business, doesn't it?
I think it does, yeah. And I hate this phrase, but there needs to be a realistic approach to this because, like Mickey said, and he's absolutely spot on, there are at least 8 clubs in that league who would command a better quality of play than we would right now, regardless of the finances that are quite obviously still there, and regardless of Carlo Ancelotti. Players want Europe and players want Champions League football. They want Champions League as a priority. If not, they want to play in the Europa League. That's just the way it is. You look at Aubameyang at Arsenal, a pound to a penny, I think he'd be off if they didn't have Europa League football next season because he sees it as something he can go and win. With Arsenal, and players want to showcase their talents at that level. We don't have that right now. Like Mickey said, the one ace in the pack we do have is Ancelotti, and I sound like a broken record. There's someone saying it, but I'd be really downbeat and concerned about Everton if we didn't have him as the manager. Can you imagine going into this summer having finished 12th with Marco Silva still in charge? Who could you possibly look at getting to improve that midfield? Now, with that in mind, we slip into this territory of anyone's better than what we already have, and that's where we have to be really, really careful because that's a trap we've gone down in the past, haven't we? When we've recruited players in the past and thought, yeah, this guy's the one, like Sarah was saying, in terms of just getting some sort of improvement in. And any improvement is an improvement, so we should all be happy with it. It's not really the case, is it? We need a substantial improvement. We need players that are going to take us from 12th to challenging for Europa League spot and getting the Europa League spot. You look at clubs like Wolves, even Newcastle without the takeover. Do you know what I mean? They're talking about another consortium getting together and buying them out. It just concerns me that we're sliding that by the wayside. And if you stand still in this league, you plummet. And that's what's happened to us, isn't it? We've invested loads and loads of money over the years and not got any better, whilst everybody else seems to have improved in quite a linear sort of way in the league. And we have problems there, and I'm sure there are other sides as well. Even look at Leeds coming up. If they're to get the financial back, and it's reported there as well, that's another iron in the fire that we have to contend with. So those 2 players you've mentioned there, I think are substantial improvements in just the basic areas. And that is having some legs in there, having a physical presence, and lads who will run and run and run. Now, Alan, like Sarah said, that he's one that excites me from what I've seen of him because he just seems to have this bullish attitude in midfield of constantly hunting down the ball. He's the type of player that and again, I hate making comparisons to previous players, but he's a Idrissa Gueye-like in terms of his pressing action. He likes to hunt for the ball in midfield. There's a few clips been doing the rounds already of him when he's basically just ran into like 3 or 4 tackles consecutively, banging into players, winning the ball back. what more does a Goodison crowd love than that sort of thing? They love all that. So he looks like somebody who'd endear himself to the fans straight away with that attitude of sort of never say die. That attitude sadly has been missing from the squad. So even from a mental point of view, I think he'd give us a bit of a lift. And Doucouré is a player we've had on our radar for quite some time, haven't we? I agree with Mickey. I think he's spot on again there in his inconsistencies. But that's why he's playing in a relegated team. That's why, with all due respect to ourselves, Everton are interested in him, because he's not the finished article. The hope is here that we sign players in that bracket of, well, they're inconsistent, but on the day they're really good. And the hope is that you've got a manager like Ancelotti and the team that he's got there that'll turn those quite poor performances into average performances, and then we get more and more of a consistent level from both the midfield. So if we went into the season lining up with Gomez, Doucouré and Alan as a 3, that to me is a substantial improvement, and we couldn't really ask for much more at this stage. I think everybody's woken up to the fact that this, once again, how many times we said it, is a long-term project, and it's something we all need to be patient with and stuff like that. I've seen people have a go at the ages and profiles of these players. Alan's 29. I think Doucouré's 27. Gomez is already 27. But that's not an ageing midfield, is it? Let's be honest. People just seem to have this obsession of getting young players in the door. No higher than like 23, 24 years of age. But these are hardened footballers who are nowhere near the veteran stage and should be either at their or approaching peak of their career. So it should be exciting if those two come in. I'd be really happy. I'd love one more. I have to say, I'd love one more midfield player, because that would mean if the 4 of them are all fit and you're only choosing 2, maybe 3 of them every game, the one that's spare isn't actually that bad that's going to come into it. The concern for me is if you just sign 2 of them, even if one of them's injured, we're going into Sigurdsson, Tom Davies territory, aren't we? Which is still like a big issue for us, given the problems they've all had.
Yeah, well, I suppose it depends as well on what they think about Koeman, isn't it? Whether he can come back and be.
I think with that, Matt, I think you have to write him off for now. You have to write him off, and anything we get from him, as far as I'm concerned, right now is a bonus, given the injuries he's had. People will say, "Oh, he's part of Everton's future," things like that. I think it's unfair to set any level of expectation with the lad, considering he's had 2 career-ending injuries. You don't know how players are going to be when they come back. Look at the reaction to Gomez. And people talking about how long-lasting his ankle break was. We don't know how players will react from injury, and it's very rare in the modern game that players, having suffered those really bad ones, come back and find the level either that they were at or one where they can get better. So anything from him is a bonus as far as I'm concerned, because when you have that sort of luck, if you're playing again, you feel quite lucky.
Yeah, it's interesting there, Sarah, as well, what Dave said about the profile of play in regards to the 2 midfielders that we're strongly linked with are 27 and 29. The fullbacks we've been linked with recently are 28 and 29 as well. And I think going into this summer, we sort of, I think at the end of the season, a lot of us said we need to get younger players into the squad that can grow and develop, and we can move on for a profit, go back to that classic director of football model. It doesn't look as though Everton are going to go down that route based on what we're hearing and what we're seeing in the gossip columns and from some well-placed sources as well.
Yeah, and do you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong at all with buying players of that profile and that age bracket. I think when you look at 27, 28, 29, 30, even 30 plus, like players are in sort of prime of their career, a lot of them. And, right now, I know we look at, as you said, the brand of football and the kind of thing that we want brands to do as director of football is you're bringing in these young talents that you can progress over a few years and maybe sell on at the bigger teams, or hopefully by then we're able to keep them in. But for now, I think we absolutely need, like Dave said, players that are hardened to football, that are experienced, and Doucouré particularly, so much Premier League experience. I think the age they're at is fine for us for now. I think they're going to be at the kind of peak of their playing ability. And look at Leighton Baines, do you know what I mean? I'd have still had him playing for Everton for 2 seasons more, I think. And he's 34, 35. And so I think people need to calm down when it comes to ages. People are writing off players before they've even seen them play. I've no issues with that at all.
What about
you?
You?
I'm exactly the same, mate. The same as Sarah. I have no issues with players that age coming in. professionals. I think the club will look at it slightly different, or the people above will look at it slightly different, as unfortunately now players are commodities, aren't they? And if you're bringing players in at 28, 29, 30, and you're paying 20 million pounds upwards, there's obviously no sell on there, and we're not going to get any money back. But unfortunately, we're not in that position to look at it as a business. I think we've just got to get players in that are going to hit the ground running and run it as a football club now. And, we can't run it as a business at the moment.
That's a cracking point, Matt. And there's a lot of the conversations I've been having lately with Blues is about the sell-on value or the lack of it, because we've been down this road so many times, haven't we? When you look at the investments in Walcott, and you look at Sigurdsson, and we're getting these players for extortionate amounts of money where there is no sell-on. Where I think this is different, and where I don't think this is as much of a risk, is if you're investing 25 million into Corey, you're getting Alan in for a season low, maybe with an option to buy, then those players don't quite reach the heights of those fees that we paid in the past for players that don't have that sell-on value. Plus, they don't come with the baggage in Premier League terms. Sigurdsson at Swansea, a little bit of a mirage, wasn't he? Because we all thought, well, he's just going to bring these set-piece gems with him, and he's able to slice open the fences, when in reality, that wasn't the case when he came to us, and he's been really, really poor. Is that just his level, and he just looked better in a poor Swansea side? That feels like it's more of a sensible thing to say about him now. But with these guys, they offer something different in terms of the physical attributes, and I think that's such a big thing for us right now, of getting players that are physically built for the Premier League, because any of those midfielders, each one of them are lacking. Even Gomez is lacking that pace. You look at Sigurdsson, doesn't have either pace or strength, it seems, and Davies similar as well. You're not looking at any sort of penetration in the midfield, and every time you get the ball, it's either square or backwards. These guys that we're looking to get into Corey, powerful runner, likes to get forward, a bit more box to box. Alan, as we've seen, loves to get stuck in, loves to put his foot in. They're the natural abilities of those players. We haven't signed anybody like that. And for the relatively small sums we're talking about, you sort of have to write it off, because if they're going to be the success we hope they are, they wouldn't have a sell-on value anyway, because they'd still be at the club at the age of 31, 32, and looking toward the end of their career. You get them in now in their prime, 3-4 years left in terms of how good they can be. That to me is a little bit more risk-free than going for somebody in the Premier League who we know has had flaws, i.e. Alex Iwobi, Theo Walcott, Gylfi Sigurdsson.
Can you not flip that on its head though and say, if you're signing players, and I think I'll probably say that Decore and Alan are both a bit past the best. Decore's dropped off a little bit in the last couple of seasons at Watford, and Alan was one of the best midfielders in Serie A a couple of years ago. And in recent years, he's lost a bit of his pace, he's lost a bit of his tenacity, and that's why ultimately Napoli are looking at selling him now. If you're bringing in players between the age of 27 and 29 for their physicality, that is one of the things that goes when you get to 30, 31, 32. And we've seen it with Sigurdsson, haven't we? How old's he now? 31. It's just gone.
But he never had that in the first place, Matt. This is the point I'm saying. When did you ever see Gylfi Sigurdsson at Swansea? Yes, he was a workhorse and ran a lot, but he didn't run quickly. And he wasn't shoulder barging or throwing himself into tackles either, was he?
But I wouldn't necessarily say that Decore and Alan run quickly. They both bring more presence to a central midfielder, and they move about the pitch differently to Sigurdsson. But it's still work rate, it's still stamina, it's still energy. That's what I'm sort of putting this in. If you're buying players with that in mind, then that would be more of a worry to me, to be honest. If we're going to sign players who are a bit older for a bit of money, I'd rather they were more technical and not lads who are going to have to depend on the physicality when they get to a certain age, because that's the thing that does go. And when you're a player that relies on that physicality, be it your strength, your energy, your pace, and that goes, I think those players find it harder to adapt to later in the career than somebody who is based on the technical ability. And that's probably the worry for me I've got with all of this.
Well, is Decore? I mean, you saying Decore's peaked at 27?
I think he's probably had a poor season last year and was okay the season before. Probably the season before Marcus Silva came to Everton was his best campaign in the Premier League, I'd say.
No, fair enough. No, I think it's a good point. It's a good counter argument, to be honest. It's a decent debate in it, but it comes back to what I've said to a lot of people when we've had this argument on Twitter or elsewhere. It is, every single transfer you make isn't risk free. It's just simply not. You could go and sign a player say these guys we're getting in now are 5 or 6 years younger and we're paying double the price we would do nowadays. The risk then becomes, well, we're not going to be able to sell them on if they're poor. So what I guess I'm trying to say is these fit a different profile, and you're absolutely right that there might well be a concern over Alan's longevity at the age of 29, and maybe he is past his best. Hopefully, him being past his best is a hell of a lot better than what we have that's meant to be in an Alex Iwobi prime. Do you know what I mean? At 23, 24 years old. But it doesn't come risk-free, unfortunately. We can't guarantee these things. But then you have to then put faith in Ancelotti. Quite clearly, this will be his signing. You have to say that if it's Alan. Do you trust him? Is he one of us? Somebody who'll go and get even more out of what he's getting at Napoli right now. You have to put your trust in him in that regard.
Yeah, I'll quickly rattle through some comments. Sarah, Mickey, Dave, any of you's got any thoughts on any of these? Just shout out and respond. Martin Carter, I thought the whole idea of brands was to bring in younger versions of Alan and Decore, rather Sangare and Santa Maria types, hungry players with a lot to prove. Ash Purser has just said my man could bring more energy and mobility to our midfield. Rob has said, for those who worry about sell-on value, we can make up some of that cash by qualifying for Europe. Not saying that's easy, but that should be the aim. And what that does, Sarah, is it just puts more pressure on a squad of players that I'm not really sure are capable of handling that based on what we've seen from them so far.
Yeah, I agree, but I think this is why we're probably looking at doing things a little bit differently this time around. I think the comment about the director of football wanting to bring in the younger players and develop them and get the sell on is exactly right. But I think just bringing in these players for now, in the way that the business is going to have to be done, we've got less time, we've had this global pandemic and everything, get players in that, exactly right. If we can qualify for Europe, then you think of the money that brings and then the ability to attract more players. This is the first window that Ancelotti, and Dave makes an excellent point there as well, by the way. I think, we have just got to trust the manager at this point. This is his first window and it is going to take time. It's boring keeping saying how long it's going to take, and it is a project, but it is. And for now, I think certainly this window, it will be more a matter of getting players that are going to improve us for next season so that we can try and push on and get European football and get Everton more back to the heights what we should be. Because right now we're a long way off, and I think just bring in some composed players that have performed at the very best and bring them in with the squad now, because as you say, we need some of that, because I don't look at that bunch we've got right now and see them fighting for Europe, sadly.
Yeah,
David. I agree with you there. Sorry, I agree with you there, Matt. Obviously, we are taking a chance. It's a massive chance. But luckily, obviously, because the market is slightly deflated, as Dave was saying before, we're not losing, mega bucks. But I think our backs are against the wall a little bit. And I think we have to sign players. I think we've got to take a chance with them, because our gems that we've got in the team at the moment, the likes of Luca Digne, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison, if we don't bring anyone in and we stand still, they'll Wanowski. They will say, well, look, this club's going nowhere. And they'll want to leave themselves. And I do think there'll be people in for them. So I think we've got to show them that we're looking at bringing players in and we want to move forward. Otherwise, I think they'll go.
I agree. I do agree with that, mate. And that is a worry for me as well. But I think in the same breath, the model which Everton have embraced, having a director of football, selling those lads, as gutted as it will be to see a lot of them go, it shouldn't be the end of the world. The whole point of having a director of football and having what is supposed to be one of the biggest scouting networks in Europe is if you get that money and you spend it on players who can come in and help improve other areas in the squad. And at the moment, I think that the biggest worry for me in that sense is that I just don't trust the recruitment team at the football club to do that. So that's why I'm totally with you on that. But in the same breath, it shouldn't be an issue for Everton. We've had a director of football in place for 2 years now. We shouldn't be sitting here panicking about the prospect of some of our best players going, because it happens to every club, and every club has to deal with this. Go on, Dave.
No, I was just going to say, just firstly to that point, Matt, that's dead right. But Everton and Brands hasn't yet, and I don't write him off by any means, but he hasn't yet proven that he's able to do that with us. Might have done it in a different league, with a different country, and a completely different set of rules and circumstances, but he's certainly not done that with us. Because in terms of losing big players, we haven't lost that yet, have we? Apart from probably a Jessica. And that wasn't financially a great thing for Everton, was it? It's not like you can go and reinvest huge sums of money that perhaps Steve Walsh wasted with Lukaku. So that the proof will be in the pudding there. If Richarlison goes next year, which I totally expect him to do, unless we have a remarkable season, you're probably looking around the £80 million mark, but then they'll have to reinvest. That'll be the sort of the barometer we can measure him by then, I think, in that way. But in the meantime, whilst we have money to spend, we don't know how much that is, of course, but we can judge it by the rumours of what these fees are going to be. The pressure is on him to firstly create something that we're able to then say, well, if we lose player X, that's fine, because the team is still at a sufficient level as it is, and then we can go reinvest that money. Problem being, aside from Richarlison and probably Luka Dean, I don't think we have a lot of players that are saleable assets, and that's an issue. I think if we run out of money that Mercedes putting in, I think this season, even the lockdown, in quite a perverse way, might have helped us a little bit because the FFP has been pushed back a year, so they might feel like they can push the boat out a little bit more. And because players generally should be going for lesser money than normal times, Everton might well think they can capitalise on that. But I put my hand up initially because we had two comments here that I think are really interesting. So Mike Cunliffe says Alan is the shithouse we need in the centre of the park.
Yes.
I completely agree with that.
Love
Then the other
that.
end of the scale here goes back to a point that I made towards the start of the show. And Andrew Cunningham says they couldn't make the midfield any worse. Now that, to me, whilst he's absolutely right in real terms, is a massive concern in mentality that we all, I think, need to shake from our systems, because when you have that attitude, like I said earlier in the show, any play you get in your head is going to improve. And that's simply not the case. That is the well-trodden path Everton have fallen down so many times, is getting players in. You think, wow, yeah, Sigurdsson's great getting him in, isn't it? He's going to massively improve the squad straight away because what's there already is pretty crap. So by saying just, anyone will do type of attitude, I think is a very, very dangerous thing for us, certainly from the fans. But like I said on the lengthy podcast with Rob Vera the other week, if anyone listened to that, Everton seem, and I think I said it to you, Matt, Everton are so reactive that they seem to appease what the fan general thinking is. Do you know what I mean? That sort of profile of player, for instance, rather than thinking up with these ideas themselves. And it's very, very worrying, I think, if we have an attitude of, well, at least he's better than Tom Davies. Any of those sentences that contain those words, at least, well, at least, we can't go into this with that attitude because we could end up with Jeff Hendrick.
Would he improve our midfield?
What's that?
Would he improve our midfield?
Well, that's the thing. He would, but that's not the point, is it? You want quality.
Yeah, 100%. We'll do a few more questions. If anyone's got any on YouTube, I had loads coming in today. Really appreciate everyone interacting with this. Really enjoying it. So David Snooks has said, I agree, Dave, on the third transfer midfielder. Joe Williams would be ideal for me. Is that your alter ego on YouTube, Dave? Getting people to agree with you?
I've just got a separate account, mate. I just type in questions and praise myself on it.
David Snooks. We've had a couple of comments on the goalkeeper. David Masson has said, do you think with Pickford that his mistakes will again destroy the team's confidence? I can remember every time over the last couple of years we were getting some momentum, his mistakes would wreck it. And Tufi has said, I want to think Pickford has been given a stern warning from Ancelotti that if he F's up again, he's out. Sarah, there's no talk really, Sarah, about the goalkeeper. We've had some tentative links of Sergio Romero, but it would appear that Pickford's going to be here next year. How do you feel about that?
It's sad to say, but I do find it a little bit concerning, given what we've seen from him. And I think that comment about there's been times where we've been building momentum over, seasons, and then a mistake like the obvious one, which we all know about, I think it really damaged us psychologically, and it took us quite a long time to recover from that. And you look at the Newcastle game where we're literally 2 goals up into injury time and we end up drawing the game. It's just remarkable. And, this is one of the things I think if I was a professional footballer, I'd probably be the same. I get too emotional and too emotionally involved, and I'd probably be wanting to stick my fingers up at the opposition fans and wound up by them and stuff like that. But I'm not a professional footballer, and
Exactly.
I do think there's a lot of that where it does get to him, and it's human nature, I think. But if you're going to be performing in the Premier League, you've got to be switched on at all times. You can't let your personal feelings and emotions get in the way of what you're doing as a job. And I think it must cause massive problems throughout the team if you're worried that you don't know what your keeper's going to do. When you've got players like Michael Keane, who we've seen so much is very much a confidence player. And I think Holgate coming in did the world of good, and the likes of Dean and stuff, and Koeman had been good, but it must affect them psychologically. So, I think goalkeeper position is definitely one that Ancelotti will be keeping his eye on. If Pickford's still here next season, then let's hope we see a vast improvement and a bit of maturity in the way he plays, because we can't keep affording these mistakes.
What do you think about that one, Mickey? You in the same boat?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously Pickford's, it hasn't been his ability, as his attitude has been the issue from day one. I still believe he thinks he's a lot better than what he is, and I think he's probably still believes that he should be at a bigger and better club. I think that's the attitude, that's the vibe that he gives up. And if someone was to come in for him, then I think his head would certainly be turned. But I wouldn't be too worried, because I've seen a keeper who played for Red Bull the other night who was outstanding, who I hadn't seen him before, who I'd be certainly be in for straight away.
Was that the former Liverpool goalkeeper, Galachi?
Is that who he played in the semi the other night against Paris Saint-Germain? He was outstanding.
Yeah. He was at Liverpool, wasn't he?
Story. I was going to say, Matt, there's a funny story behind that, isn't it? Because he was playing for Hereford before RB Leipzig was formed 11 years ago. So
wow,
some rise to prominence, that, isn't it?
Yeah, Sevilla keeper look up as well, didn't he, against United?
Yeah. I think there's a silver lining to Pickford here, and hear me out, because I'm very much of, I'd happily sell him if, I don't know, you'd take a loss at this point when you have someone come in 20 million quid for him. I think you bite the hand off right now, I really do, because you could probably go and get somebody who's better for a fraction of that price. And the issue is he's a modern day goalkeeper that at his best, when we got him at his best and when he's been his best, often been an England shirt, hasn't it? And that leads me to agree with Mickey there. I don't think he wants or cares about Everton anywhere near as much as he does about England. But where that can help us and benefit us right now is his place is undoubtedly up for grabs for England right now. So there's a Euros coming up next summer that's been delayed. If Pickford goes into this season not knowing that his place is assured, then surely he has to react. Surely he has to give something extra to try and get in. If it's England that he really cares about, as we all suspect, then he's going to have to perform for Everton in order to get that jersey next summer, because you've got a couple of goalkeepers lining up behind him who are more than competent and probably higher up on the scale, both of them right now, in Nick Pope and Dean Henderson. I think the pair of them are probably quite a considerable way ahead of him right now. Southgate might well see that difference and think, well, I'll stick with him out of loyalty, or maybe because he has performed in an England shirt, then he might get the nod. That's purely up to the England manager. But if Pickford values his England place much more than anywhere else he is, first of all, it's terrible for us, isn't it? It doesn't do anything for us if he feels like that. But maybe the one time it actually can serve as a benefit for Everton is if he feels he has to perform in an Everton shirt in order to keep his England spot. So, look, you take that, don't you? I mean, if that is the case, I'm happy for that to be the case for now. And then we can look at maybe addressing it next summer. And we haven't got to make so many first team big signings right now to start improving this squad. Because sadly, even though we've been really poor, he's nowhere near the top of the list of priorities right now, is he?
It is infuriating, though. Sorry, just quickly. It is infuriating. I think you make a really good point there, Dave. But it's infuriating when you think that there are players like that, to think there's an Everton player that's not that bothered. And, you want every single one of your players, it's a long time ago, and it's not even just being sentimental, because I feel this is something that you should have at every football club anyway. But the mentality that like Bainesy, Cahill, Leon Osman, Arteta, Pienaar, they all loved this football club and were so proud to be playing for them. And I think, if you've got players there, and there's clearly been a few and still is a few there, that we want well rid of that, don't we? But you're right in what you're saying, that I think his position for England is certainly under more jeopardy than it has been for a while. So if he's still here, we will see him step up a little bit.
Just one more comment on YouTube. David Hamron said, thoughts on the Lucas Ocampos link. from David Ornstein. That was a quick video that David Ornstein did with The Athletic yesterday, where he was talking about players Everton were potentially interested in, and he mentioned Everton were looking at Lucas Ocampos from Sevilla, someone who, just from my own point of view, has had a wonderful season at Seville, scored 14 goals and got 3 assists in La Liga, moved from Marseille for, I think, about 15 million euros last summer, but I reckon that they'll be looking to get about 3 or 4 times that amount of money for him, so I'll be very, very surprised if that one came off. But yeah, we are out of time today. Thanks very much to everybody for getting involved on YouTube. If you haven't got involved on YouTube and listened to the podcast, next week we'll be doing this at the same time, 5 p.m. BST on YouTube Live, so you can get involved with the comments. Cheers to Mickey, cheers to Sarah, cheers to Dave as well. That has been your weekly show here on the Blue Room. We'll speak to you again very soon.